Hey guys, it's Nick, and I'm here smack in the middle of New York City on 42nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. As you see, this is Tourism Central, and you would think that if you were going to own a hotel someplace in New York City, this would probably be the best place to own one, right? Well, let's take a look. You see that white marquee over there that's empty, that has no signage? That used to be the Hilton Hotel Times Square, right in the middle of Times Square, and it's like a 44-story building, and it has closed down at the end of 2020. So why was it closed down? Was it closed down because of the pandemic, or were there other problems even before the pandemic? Let's talk a little bit about who owns this hotel. This hotel is owned by Sunshine Hotel Investment REIT, and the stock symbol is SHO if you want to look it up. They bought this hotel back in 2006 for about $242 million, and they took a loan on it for about $80 million. They defaulted on this loan back around October, or they closed down the hotel around October, and they made a deal with their lender to hand back the keys to the hotel. So the lender now owns the hotel and is trying to sell it. Now, you would think that this hotel would be able to withstand the problems with the pandemic, but they were actually having problems even before the pandemic began in 2019. And when their loan was underwritten, it was underwritten with the assumption that their net operating income would be 2.16 times their debt service. But by September 2019, it was way below. It was 1.03 times their debt service. And so they already had problems before the pandemic started. And what really put the nail in the coffin was, one is the pandemic. A lot of international and business travelers stay in fancy places like this, expensive places, and those travelers dropped from something like 13.5 million travelers in 2019 down to about 2.4 million international and business travelers in 2020, and now it's ticked up a little bit back to like 4.6 million for 2021. Still not enough to keep something like this afloat, I guess. Now, another big headwind for this hotel is that the amount of hotels they've been building in New York City in the last few years is astounding. I mean, you go by any little side street and you see there's like some new little hotel that popped up, or a few of them on the street. So the number of hotels in New York City from just a few years ago was about 85,000, and now recently it's more like 125,000 hotel rooms. So that's about a 50% increase. And then, of course, add to that the additional rooms that are supplied by people using Airbnb to rent out their own rooms. And you can see, not only is there a hotel glut and a lack of demand from tourists, but Airbnb is also a factor in this. And I gotta say, I was here yesterday and I was walking around Broadway and all of that in the center of Times Square, and it was a pretty busy day. There were a lot of people out, a lot of tourists, but a lot of those tourists could be locals and not necessarily international travelers who typically spend a lot more money when they come to New York. So that could be a factor as well. And add to that the price of energy, gasoline, which translates to higher prices for flights to come to the US or to New York City, increases the price of everything for people. So with all this uncertainty, with the high prices of energy, with still having to have a vaccine to come into the US if you are not a US citizen, all of these things add up to problems in the hotel industry, and this place that was weak to begin with didn't stand much of a chance for staying open that long. And just so you know, the closing of this Hilton hotel doesn't mean Hilton itself is going out of business or anything like that. Hilton is a franchise, kind of like McDonald's, where they own some of the hotels, but they also franchise some of the hotels. And so apparently this was a franchised hotel owned by that REIT, and You know, it was a business decision. They invested $242 million, took a $80 million loan. It didn't work out. They turned the keys back to the bank. They lost about $160 million, and they go on with their business basically. And just to give you an example of how bad the pandemic hit New York City, the occupancy rate in New York City in Midtown is usually around 80%. During the pandemic, it fell to around 35%, and now it's come up a little bit to like 45%. However, as a comparison, after 9/11, the occupancy rate never fell below 60% in New York City. So this was a way bigger hit even than 9/11. So what's the latest on what's going to happen to this hotel? Well, like I said, they gave the keys back to their lender, Torchlight Investment Company, and Torchlight is probably looking to sell it. And the latest information is that there are some bids on this for around $80 million. So out of the whatever number of rooms they have, I think it's 476, that comes to around $178,000 per room that somebody is willing to pay. And coincidentally, that's about what Torchlight is owned on this property. So they're probably going to break even, or maybe if they hold it a little bit and it gets a little better in New York, they might even make a little money on it. But Sunstone REIT is taking a big hit on this, like 70% or something, about $160 million. Hopefully they have hotels in other areas, so they're diversified and they're not all in New York City hotel business. So guys, I hope you like this look at what's going on in New York real estate in the hotel industry and what that means for New York as a whole in terms of tourism and the city coming back or not. Just as it's climbing out of the pandemic, we're having problems with oil prices and wars and all of this stuff, so that could delay the tourists coming back this summer. We will see. I hope you like this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys.